And welcome to Scheduling Practices to Support Arts Education. My name is Rachel McGrain. I'm your host for today and the proud executive director at AEMS Arts Education in Maryland Schools. At AEMS, we envision a public education system in Maryland that supports, cultivates, nurtures, and uplifts all students' creativity through a robust arts education experience so they can thrive in a healthy society. One of the most valuable resources we can offer for students to be able to access a comprehensive arts education is time. We know from years of experience, surveys, conversations, and from many of the comments that folks in this Zoom room submitted to us, that scheduling can make or break a school's ability to offer meaningful and transformative arts education to its students. So at this moment, when there are a lot of new policies and priorities coming at schools from every which way, we're taking some time to discuss the challenges and creative solutions to navigating scheduling that support students by providing robust opportunities for arts education. I'd first like to acknowledge and thank the MSDE representatives in the room for being here today as friendly observers, as they also deepen their understanding of concerns and questions around scheduling. If there are any questions that come up specifically for MSDE, we'll be happy to note those and follow up. So now it's time to introduce our rockstar panelists. Thank you all so much for offering your time, expertise, and perspective today. I'll ask each one of you to share a bit about your role and your relationship to scheduling. Why is effective scheduling for the arts important to you and the students you serve? We'll start with Terry, then go to Chris, Mia, and Tamara. Take it away, Terry.
Good afternoon, friends. My name is Terry Eberhard. I'm the music coordinator in Howard County Public Schools. And, I was just sharing before we all got on the call, that I had the good fortune of teaching high school and teaching middle school and spending some time in elementary school. And in each one of those spaces, I've observed that the schedule had a drastic impact on access to the arts, but also to the experience in the arts. So for me, it's very personal that schedules are looked at system wide, and that we are really strategic about looking at how we schedule, what opportunities there are for students to have access to arts programming, what are the on ramps and off ramps. You'll hear me talk about on ramps and off ramps a lot today, because I think that's one of the things that's most critical, is that at every level there are on ramps for students to have access to the arts, and then off ramps for them to try other arts, because it changes for each one of us. So, that scheduling piece is critical, and having strong relationships with data managers in the building, as well as administrators that are building schedules and aligning where classes live in the master schedule, is critical. And I know we'll talk lots more about it, so I won't share too much right now. So thank you, Rachel.
Thanks, Terry, and on to Chris. Christopher, you are on mute.
There we go. I'm Christopher Berry. I am an assistant principal at Urbana High School in Frederick County. But I've been in 4 different counties over the years as a student, as a parent, and I've worked in both Montgomery and Frederick County. In terms of scheduling, had the good fortune of being a department chair. So, from as small as working with 10 different people and trying to, develop a schedule for a department in a high school, but then had the good fortune also of opening a school that was a signature program in the arts and humanities. And so I spent 5 years as the coordinator of that program, and just really immersed in the world of arts and how to bring about educational opportunities for students, and again, from both a philosophical and a practical level. And then I became an assistant principal, where and the master schedule, where I had to juggle the needs of all the different curricular areas and getting kids scheduled and making sure that they had plenty of opportunities, but at the same time, making the trains run on time in terms of the schedule itself. But it was in that time that I think I realized that, given my background, I was also given working hard to give priority to the arts, and I like that term, Terry, as many on-ramps as possible for students, and different ways forward. And then for the last 14 years, I served as principal of 3 different high schools. the school that was the signature program in the arts and humanities, and then two comprehensive high schools where, again, I was that had different priorities where classes were concerned, and some toward the arts and some not. So just sort of fighting those battles on behalf of our art students on a daily basis. And after 14 years as principal, I decided that I wanted to just take a step back, and now I'm an assistant principal again. And that has been a very good move for me. And again, I'm re-immersed in the master schedule on a regular basis. So, and Rachel, I want to thank you. And I was very proud to be AEMS 2013 Principal of the Year. So happy to give back.
Well, thank you, Christopher. And we're on to Mia.
Hi, my name is Mia of Utah. I am professionally known as Miss Mia. That's why it's on my thing. All of the kids in the school, all the parents call me Miss Mia. I have been a school counselor since the 2018-19 school year. And prior to that, from 2002 on, I was a high school English teacher. And I switched to school counseling, which is my passion, my love, and clearly what I should have been doing the entire time. I want to send a special hello to all of my professional school counselors. If you're a unicorn in school by yourself, you're in elementary or middle school, you're probably by yourself. So, hey, you are not alone today. I get the privilege, and I really do mean this, of getting to expose children to the arts. Like if they've never thought about singing or dancing or art as a career, I get to kind of show that to them in the work that I do. School counselors, we focus on academics, college and career, and social and emotional learning, and kind of all of that can be wrapped up in the arts. So that's a lot of what I do. I also sit on the achievement committee, which also doubles as a scheduling committee around this time of year. So we spend a lot of time looking at the actual the guidance from Baltimore City Public Schools to see how much time we need to put into to each kid's schedule to give them an arts exposure experience in middle school. So that is what I do. Arts is just a part of my life. My family, my children have been in the arts. My sister makes her living in the arts. So I fully believe in the earlier you expose a child, the more opportunities you're going to give them. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you for thinking of me.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Mia. And we'll finish off our intros with Tamara.
I don't know how I can follow Miss Mia because girl has got probably the most challenging job of all. So I'm Tamara Mills, and I am from Worcester County Public Schools. I was originally from Frederick County, but have been on the Eastern Shore now for 31 years. I was an art major at Salisbury University. And when I did my internship many years ago, which was in high school, and then I did an internship in elementary. And then, of course, where did I get hired? Middle school, right? So, so I have some experience, a little bit of experience at all three levels. In addition to teaching art for 9 years, I became an assistant principal at an arts integration school, and it was an intermediate level school. So at the time, it was fourth, fifth, and sixth grade. I've taught the university methods course, so I've helped to kind of train the up and coming arts interns, work with multiple schools, a lot of different types of schedules. And while scheduling itself is not my strongest skill set, I have seen so many different schedules and seen what works and what doesn't. I think why I feel strongly about this, in particular, this topic, is that I really believe that equity and equitable access to the arts is one of the most important things that we as coordinators have to manage and need to do. Race, economics, location, none of those things should ever be a barrier to access for students to either experience the arts, explore them, or be successful in them. And there's so many things that we cannot control in our world, especially as students, right? But also as adults. And so I feel like with enough effort and creative problem solving, this is one of those things we can control to make our kids' lives better. So thanks for having me.
Very well said. So thank you all so much for all of those introductions. And so we can hear from all of you the importance of the arts on so many different levels for students. And also just that at the center, what we're talking about today is an equity issue. We have to make sure that all students have access to these really critical opportunities that the arts provide. And scheduling is a big piece of that, of making sure that students have those opportunities. So thank you all for for all of the work that you do, and again, for coming and sharing some of that expertise today. So in secondary grades, student choice of arts disciplines is developmentally appropriate, required by our state regulations, and prepares students for college and career readiness. The arts are, of course, also extremely important in elementary grades, and that's typically where students get exposure. With some of you talked about exposure and making sure that students even know what's out there to begin with. So as we, again, kick things off, my first official question to you all is, what are 1 to 2 guiding principles or best practices to make an effective schedule that encourages student exploration and specialization in the arts? And we'll start with Miss Mia for this one.
So hello again. So a guiding principle, like I just picked up, was the elementary and middle school guidance. And I don't think I said it, but I am a middle school counselor in Baltimore City Public Schools. But we are attached to an elementary school, so I'm kind of well versed. Well, I understand how they do the scheduling down there, and I know what we do up here. So one of the things that we have that's really cool is where it's going on right now. It's a collaboration between the elementary school and the middle school. We're putting on Aladdin Junior so that the babies and the middle school children are working together. So they get exposure to theater at least once during the school year in 1 quarter, the babies down there. Up here, all of the 6th graders get theater in the 6th grade for an entire quarter. And then our 7th and our 8th graders get other types of art. We've had visual art, and we've had dance, and we've also had theater in our middle school. So we always make sure that each child has exposure to an art in each grade of middle school. And then our theater teacher also is a singer. So if you happen to know how to sing and you also love, to perform, he kind of develops those skills for the kids in that way. Another way they specialize, we don't have a visual art program right now, but we have an after school program that offers arts and crafts class, a dance class, and also I have an art club during the day, like it's once a week during lunchtime, and the kids can come and sit in this office right here. And some of their artwork is like on this wall, and they just kind of sketch and draw. So it's like different opportunities that children have here to get it as a class, and then also if they have additional interests, kind of develop their skills further.
Thanks, Mia. And I appreciate that you shared there's the after school piece, but then also the club during the school day, because that's such an important part. After school is not always accessible for everybody. So making sure that those opportunities are offered during the school day is so important. All right, Chris, on to you.
So in the high school, you students take a required fine arts credit in order to graduate, and many will take classes way beyond that. So I'm just going to give you a couple of things. Number one, scheduling the arts first or near the beginning of the process. The scheduling process really is very linear. And if you start, I know there are lots of priorities, but I often find that starting with my special ed students and my arts related students are important. Why? Because I'll just say, first of all, several of your arts classes are ensemble based. So if the schedule kicks them out, you're not only not giving that child the opportunity, but you're leaving holes in your ensemble. So really, either scheduling it first, or putting some scheduling programs have the ability to give certain courses a higher priority and say this gets a higher priority or trumps something if there is a conflict in the student's schedule. So that is something I'm going to say. Number two, running combo classes. Sometimes when you run those tallies, you've got 10 in one class and 10 in another. But if you can somehow put the two together and work with the teacher to run both classes during the same period or block, you get the advantage of doing that. I don't know many arts related teachers who won't say, is my choice not running either of these, or I've got to find a way to teach both of them in the same period or the same block. They'll choose that more times than not. Which leads me to the third and I think very important thing: bringing in the department chair in your discussion, and or sometimes individual teachers, and really, picking their brain. They will come up with much better, more creative ideas on how to run, schedule. You determine what their priorities are, what they're committed to, what their vision is. Your job then as the scheduler is to kind of sometimes get an understanding of that, ask questions, but also manage their expectations, because they're very passionate about their subject. But as the scheduler, you got to say, okay, this is possible, this is not, or I have to think about this. Because, but I promise you, I always, end any meeting I've had with a department chair or individual teachers and say, I never would have thought of that, or that will work, or together the three of us came up with a better way to do something.
Collaboration is so important. Terry, I see you nodding your head. Go for it.
Oh, I'm just so excited because Chris dinged a lot of the things that I would say about high school scheduling. And I really want to hopefully charge up my educators that are out there thinking about how they can be a part of the process, because I think that's critical. And I think oftentimes as music educators, sometimes we put ourselves in the box and we say, okay, well, that conversation isn't for me, or that part of the equation isn't mine to tackle. But allowing ourselves to always be in those spaces really allows us to have more a better seat at the table. I used to say at the high school, when I worked at the high school, that I was the fifth counselor because I was in guidance as much as any one of the counselors. I was always in that space, talking to the counselors, being around when new kids come into the building just to say, "Hey, I'm the choir director. You should come and take choir," right? So the thing that I would add to Chris's list is, just having the ability to have a place for every kid in our ensemble classes. Right. I think sometimes we feel like, okay, well, I teach band or orchestra, and 90% of the kids have been playing since they were in the fourth grade, or they've had a long history of playing. So it's hard for me to start a kid in ninth grade, but we need to start a kid in ninth grade. We need to have a place where a kid can feel like their ability level is honored, and there's a space for them to grow into the musician that we know that they can be. So I'm a huge proponent in Howard County. We have ability-based ensembles where we have some autonomy for an eighth grader that is just starting to find a place, right? They don't have to be in the wind ensemble just because they're in eighth grade. They can be in the concert band where they can start learning how to function on that instrument. So having places where kids can have on ramps into a program is great. And then I'm going to look at my teachers again and say that having an off ramp out is also important for that student that is in the band and maybe struggling in the band but really should be in the choir, and you hear that beautiful voice and you can say, hey, let me steward you over to the choir director because I think this might be a better fit for you. And it's not, hey, I don't want a kid that's not good enough to be in my group, but maybe just a place where their passion can really be uplifted. Our superintendent, I recall a line that he uses often where he says he wants our kids to leave our system with their dreams intact. So if somebody's dreaming of being in choir, but they're in band, we're in the wrong seat. So how do we help them get from the band to the choir, or to the choir to dance, right? I mean, I think we have to be thinking about this as a holistic approach, and not that this is my kid and this kid belongs in the choir because they entered into the choir. The last piece I'll add to this is that it's really imperative for us as administrators to build in articulation time for teachers to talk kids beyond the confounds of their building, to be able to say, hey, I've got five elementary schoolers that are coming over to the middle school and they play trombone. And, I think this kid would be great to shift over to tuba, or this kid would be wonderful as a reed player. He's playing clarinet, but I think you could probably convince him into playing this or whatever. I think having that built in time, I say it again and again, we have to build that time in for teachers to have that kind of discourse with each other, that kind of conversation about the students that are coming through the pipeline, but also to recruit and articulate kids into the program. I know that we want to make sure that kids get an opportunity to explore what the options are, but that can only happen if there are natural touch points for an art teacher to talk to an art teacher in elementary school and say, hey, these are the kids that we should be targeting for photo in high school, or, or these are the kids that really make a lot of sense to go in this direction or that direction. So having built-in articulation time is critical to the process, and maybe not as directly a guardrail for scheduling, but an important part of the equation. I think Chris hit the nail on the head with scheduling those larger arts classes first. And they often are singletons, but I always am trying to figure out how can I make it not a singleton, right? Yes, chamber choir is a singleton, but here are three other choir options that meet three other periods that might work. So just having some of that autonomy might help. I'll be quiet. Sorry.
That's great. Thank you, Terry. All right. And Tamra, on
Yeah,
to you.
I have nothing left to say. They said it all. No, I'm just kidding. I did agree with a lot of what they said, though. Like Mr. Barry said, scheduling music first. When I suggest that to principals, I definitely get side eye, right? But specifically at a middle school level, where you're starting to see students compete, participate in adjudications and festivals, scheduling around music is one of the most beneficial things you can do for a music student, particularly because, and I don't necessarily mean general music, but typically in performance-based music classes. Um, so starting with scheduling the students in music and in the arts or specials areas first, and then kind of building those other classes out around them is actually more beneficial than most people think. Um, I love also the suggestion about having a department chair or a specials representative as part of the scheduling process. I had been teaching for about 6 years in art and was admittedly a little bit frustrated with some of the scheduling. And my principal said to me, all right, here you go. Here's the task. You do the schedule, right? And so it was incredibly eye-opening. It really was. It helped me to sort of understand the process, see how difficult it was, but also have sort of a say in that piece. And so anytime you can involve your special areas teachers, that is great. One thing I do want to point out, especially at the elementary and also the middle school level, research actually shows that the frequency of the class and how often students have it is actually, it matters more and has a greater impact than the number of minutes. So, because repeated exposure builds skills, and the amount of time, of course, of each class should kind of be considered by age, as you mentioned before. So, a 1 hour arts class for pre-K, it's not terribly beneficial, right? Because it's too much time, right? 25 minutes for fifth grade is not nearly enough. So we do want to consider the minutes, but frequency of the course actually shows a greater impact. So that's one thing to keep in mind. At the elementary level, we are often, especially, we've always had a hurdle to get over a mindset from the rest of the school, right? That we are essentially planning time. So I ask you as a principal or administrator to kind of work hard to be that model for making sure that the rest of your staff kind of understands where the arts fit into the day and the child's development. And that can go a long way. And creating experiences, it might look like a wheel, right? Some schools have created a wheel of exploration where students are experiencing all these different ones at the elementary level so that then they can go and sort of specialize in something at middle or high. And the final thing I'll suggest is, and it's more of a long-term goal, but making sure you build capacity in your special areas staffing, especially your arts staffing. Because with the addition of pre-K 3 and additional universal pre-K 4s, it has really put a strain on a lot of our arts teachers where they don't have the time in their day ultimately to see all the students. So over time, building that capacity in your staff for the arts is incredibly important.
So many nuggets of wisdom. So a good handful of the things that folks just shared are gonna take us perfectly into the next section. So we're gonna play a little game. It's called This or That Art Schedule Edition. So this is going to go by really fast, and our panelists will have an opportunity to comment at the end. So I'm going to go through a rapid fire, a series of questions, and our panelists are going to hold up their fingers. So most questions have either a 1 or a 2. And then if any question has just open number, it'll just be an open number. So We're looking to see what our panelists are holding up. And again, this is going to go by quickly. All right, are you ready? Here we go. Which is better, block scheduling or traditional everyday scheduling? I see a two, a two, a two, all twos. Traditional everyday schedules have it. All right, next question. Which is better, semester or year-round courses? I see a semester, year. Okay. All a one, a two. Okay, okay. A little bit of a mixed bag there. Okay, moving on to the next question. Do all schools in your district have the same structure and schedule? One for yes, two for no. All right, we've got 2 ones and 2 no's, so we know there's quite a variety of schedules around the state. Next question is, are arts 1 required or 2 optional? Yes, this is not an opinion question. It is emphatically 1. The arts are required. Thank you. Next question. What grade is most difficult to schedule? Oh, interesting. We've got some kindergartens, 12 and 9. All right, interesting. Actually, not what I thought was going to be the answer. Next question. Do you know students who have missed out on arts because of schedule issues? 1 for yes, 2 for no. All ones. Everybody knows students who have missed out on opportunities because of scheduling. And our final question, sort of the reverse of that, have you seen access increase due to scheduling changes? 1 for yes, 2 for no. We've got, okay, 3 ones and 3 yeses and 1 no. All right, those are all of our questions. Thank you for playing. And now I will open it back up to our panelists. I don't have a specific order for this one, but if any of those questions caught you and you were like, oh, I need to say something about this, now's your time.
Yeah, so I just will add, I think a couple of those things may depend on the art form. And so I was kind of a 1 and a 2 in some of the beginning questions because I feel like when you're looking at long-term classes or year-long, I think that music it's really, really important that music fits into that year-long piece. If you have students who are auditioning for a district festival in, say, November, the performance, if they get in or if they're accepted, and the performance is in March, those are 2 completely different semesters. It's nearly impossible then for students to be able to have access and be successful in that way. However, I have seen semester-based art classes, visual art classes, or theater classes work extremely well. So I think in some cases it can depend on the art form itself.
I'll lean into that a little bit just because you know I taught a rotating block schedule which I loved. I taught that rotating block in Montgomery County, and I enjoyed the schedule. I thought it was great. I think a block schedule can work, and I think it's especially can work when you have an A day, B day, and you still have the class all year, or you have like a rotating block where you see all 7 classes you know, in a 4 or 5 day window, you see them 2 or 3 times depending upon the week. In Howard County, once upon a time, we had semesterized art and general music. And right after COVID, we shifted to a full year option for arts, and the impact has been immeasurable. It's been so fabulous to have kids be able to follow through the full depth of study in those classes as they are able to in the performing arts and band, choir, and orchestra. You know, the big 3. We've always had year-long programs there. So for our visual arts students and our dancers and theater students to also get that access has been really tremendous. I was a big fan of exploratory, but then I was realizing also that, you know, it was exploratory for visual arts and general music and dance and theater, but not for band, choir, and orchestra. And that just felt like an inequity for that student that knew right out the gate that they're a dancer or they're a theater kid, and they would want to have it all year, and they could do it in band, choir, and orchestra, but not in theater. So I think having options is great. Clearly there's not a school system that is able to run the schedule where you can have semesterized classes and you can have full year classes. I don't think that we've dreamt it it up yet. But I think right now I'm in the camp of having year-long access to all of the arts in secondary programs is the answer. We do offer one or two smaller classes in guitar and piano that are semesterized, where they could take a half credit in piano or a half credit in guitar. But everything else we offer is year-long, and I think that's the right play, at least for us. I recognize that there can be some benefits for other school systems, but for right now, that's where we kind of live, and I like it.
And I think that's interesting, the difference between guitar and piano, which are individual instruments, versus those ensemble based, and that ties into the importance of community. So it's about students' skill development, but it's also about that community piece.
Yeah, and Rachel, while I'm here, I'll say I know you probably thought I would pick a different grade level as the most difficult, but I think in most of our schools and in our elementary and middle schools, there is a stronger ability for a kid to do more arts programming. In elementary school, I'm going to get general music and art and potentially band and potentially choir. I could get all four of those in elementary schools if the stars align, right? And I have a few opportunities in middle school where I could take general music and an ensemble, or I could take, art and an ensemble in sixth grade. And then if I'm lucky, I could take two in seventh and eighth grade. In ninth grade, because of the requirements in ninth grade, I think if you get an arts class in the ninth grade, you're lucky. You're definitely not going to get two, because you add into the mix that PE health piece, and you add in but the potential of world language right away in ninth grade, and then you're done. So that's why nine feels like a bit of a challenge for me. I don't know. That's what I'm thinking today.
This was a little while ago, but I took two arts classes as a ninth grader. But I remember, even, it took a lot of finagling to make that work. So I was in wind ensemble and I was in jazz band. But in order to do that, I didn't take social studies my freshman year, and
Ah,
instead I bumped that to my senior year. So it was
ah,
U.S. history. I didn't take in ninth grade, but I took AP U.S. history my senior year. So it was kind of like a long-term schedule
commitment.
planning.
It's a
Yeah.
commitment
And
for sure.
it's funny you say that, Rachel, because I think that, at least in high school, a piece of that is in the messaging that we do to our parents
Hmm.
about that, and our incoming parents about that, because I, I'm not casting aspersions of counselors, but they want to see kids take all their credits and get all their ducks in a row. And so you will take the tech ed, you will take the language because you want to go to college. And I'm not saying you don't take those core courses, but as a principal, I would always in the incoming parent meeting say, if your child is really about the arts, you need to not only take art, but it may be possible for them to take a second art class. But you need to recognize those required things may have to come later when you have more space and time in your schedule to do something like that. So just that little nod to giving parents permission, I think, opens the door to that. And I think because the counselors are the point of sale, I think principals and assistant principals need to work with the counseling staff to say, look, you've got to think out of the box for a kid that really is into the arts, and you got to open space in your mind for, okay, the kid doesn't need their tech ed credit right now, they can take that painting class and the music class that they want to take their freshman year, and you can find a way to make that work out down the road. I also want to put a plug in for, I really struggle with the block versus semester, or semester versus year long. Frederick County runs a 4x4 schedule where we're running four classes each semester, and you teach the equivalent of a year long class in half a year. So kids get a total of 8 credit opportunities during the course of the year. 8 is wonderful, but a kid who is in a certain kind of art form or music really can go, depending on how the schedule falls, almost a full calendar year where they pick it up again, and that's really very challenging. One of the greatest pleasures I had in opening a new school, and Terry, you did this, is that we really thought about what kind of schedule we wanted for the school. And as a signature program for the arts, we said, we want a combination of everyday classes and block classes. And we arranged a schedule where we did, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, all day, and then Wednesday, or 2 of the days, I think is what we arrived at, were block classes. So you had a nice mix, and that made everybody happy in that you saw your kids a lot of the time, but by the same token, you had those block opportunities. So If you're the art teacher, you've got time to do the work on the projects. If you're the theater teacher, it's running the scenes and doing the performance. If you're the music teacher, it's really digging into the piece and getting to the point where you're putting the pieces together. If you have a dance program, it's putting the combos together so that you have time for that. So, it's where possible, where your system allows for that kind of, thinking in terms of what you're doing, those kind of things can work, and not just work for the arts. They can work for a lot of other programs. The science teachers like the combination because the block days is when they would do their labs, and the PE teachers would take their kids outside and do the game that they had planned for that day. So, that I see both, but what I don't like seeing is a kid going a long time between practicing their art form, like up to a calendar year or one semester out of two a year.
I wanted to jump in because Rachel, my children, I have two high school kids right now, and one college baby. And my two high school kids are both in the band at their high school. They go to Baltimore City College, and they had not played instruments at all for the most part until high school. And they have been playing the entire time. My baby girl plays the tuba. She's in 10th grade and she's a section leader. My son plays the trombone and he's a section leader. Surprised. And when he was a freshman, he took band and he also took keyboard. So he learned how to play the keyboard and he learned how to play the trombone in the same year. And he had never played a musical instrument in his life. And that particular high school offers the children an opportunity to choose chorus, dance, visual art, or band for all 4 years if they so choose. And they work it out, it works, but it means so much to the experience that they have in high school. And then to the point of I think it was Miss Mills, I think you said something about the resource being like the free time for teachers, their planning periods. And that just tugs at my heart so hard because it's like just trying to making sure that people understand that art is not an afterthought. It is just as important as everything else. And if you have that critical art component, like mixed in with the academics, like the children just soar. They love to come in here and like, I wish my laptop wasn't cooperating, but my whole wall is actually full of children's like sketches because our school, when we were created as a charter school, was focused on athletics. And as a counselor, I came in, I was like, I know there's some artists in here. Where are my visual artists? Where are my dancers? Where all of it? So I'm like, bring me that stuff. And they like take their sketches off of my wall and take them and put them on their portfolio and get into the schools that they want to go to because, they have an opportunity to express themselves, so I just feel like it's so important that we really like infuse the importance of arts as early as possible to our young people and to our teachers, because it's not just a take this and go sit over there. Like as a counselor, when I would do my lessons and then a part of the lesson with the little babies would be some kind of drawing piece, the most brilliant artists, I would be like, you did this and you're 6? And they're like, oh yeah. And like no one's ever seen it before. I'm like, you need to, and I call their parents and we have a whole conversation about it. But I have to just highlight how important it is in just the children's development. It's just so critically important.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's okay. I'm just really grateful that, Miss Mia just touched on this and Christopher touched on the parent involvement piece as well. And many of you touched on just this idea of mindset and, keeping an open mind and recognizing that the arts are just as important as other subjects and then what that means in practice. Also go brass. I'm a trumpet player. And also back to the piece about, kind of creative individual scheduling at the high school level. I first want to clarify, I'm not knocking social studies at all. And in fact, I ended up becoming a double music and history major. So taking that history class my senior year as AP history was actually really integral to like what I ended up studying in college in addition to the arts. And then tying back in again, that's a thing for schedulers to be aware of, for parents to be aware of, but also it was back to one of Terry's first points. Teacher, Lou Dutrow, for those who know him, was like, Rachel needs to be in my jazz band and we're going to figure out how to make it happen. And so that was again like kind of a teacher advocating for a student to figure out how to make it work. Um, so we have about 20 minutes left. I want to get through two more questions. The next question I want to ask is, how do you ensure that students of all abilities, including those who require additional services, so thinking about special education students, multilingual learners, how do you ensure that students of all abilities have adequate time to access meaningful arts instruction? I'm going to open this up, no specific order. Whoever feels inspired to take this first, go for it.
Well, I can just start because I have a real quick answer. So it is on every kid's schedule. So even our kids who are in our mostly self-contained classes, like they make their way over to the art classes. So all of our children are in every single class in middles.
Do you feel, Mia, that the arts teachers are well supported to be able to integrate those students from the self-contained classes in their arts classrooms?
Yes. And I say this with such confidence because from the time that I came to this particular school, I was struck by how not only the teachers make sure that all children are included, but the children also make sure, like if they're sitting next to a kid and they know they're coming from like self-contained or something, and we used to have life skills, and they would be like in the mix as well. Like there's no separate life skills art class. Like everybody is taking everything together. And it's like the children are learning that care and that empathy for others, which is one of the core values of our school anyway. So we have everybody working together.
I also, oh,
No,
sorry, can I
please,
put in
please.
a little plug?
Yeah.
Sorry, Terry.
No,
I
you're good.
want to put in a plug for this is where highly certified teachers are very important. So if you are on the call as an administrator, it's incredibly important that you are hiring individuals who are certified in their content area because that is part of their training. So as arts teachers in the state of Maryland, they receive their pre-K through 12 certification, and that will include courses and specific strategies that they're taught on teaching the arts to all populations, special needs, high needs, immigrants, MLs, the whole gamut. If you aren't familiar with an organization called VSA, which is Very Special Arts, I believe it's run through the Kennedy Center and that sort of thing. They are experts at adapting. It is all about arts for students who need it adapted for their special needs. So look into that. But again, I really can't be enough of an advocate around making sure you're hiring those certified people. And it's harder. It's getting harder and harder to find them, unfortunately. So that whole hiring process can be very challenging, but it really makes a difference because you're going to find the people with that skill set.
Yeah, I, what I really wanted to just add was that this is where we should shine. This is the place where we really should shine because the arts are for everybody and they immediately show up for every single student. And if we're doing our jobs well, every student that walks into an arts classroom feels welcome, they feel included, they feel like they're a part of something greater than themselves. And that's really where we should shine out the gate. And that's why I mentioned that teachers making themselves, I think sometimes we make ourselves feel small because others make us feel small by making us feel like we're undervalued or we're less valued or we're not core, they're core, we're not core. But when there's kid talk, I want to be in the room. Why? Because I have things to say about kids. I have kids that you're talking about that I have things to say about. So I just think that this should be a place that we really shine. And I think most of our programs show that, there is a way to include every kind of learner in the arts room. And the kids, like Miss Mia just said, the kids typically do a great job of showing that from day one. They're the ones that are like, "Hey, here, come on, come sit next to me. Hey, try this," or we're doing it like this, or whatever it is. And that's why I love this discipline and why I love these disciplines and why I'm so passionate about it because I think the proof is in the pudding. You walk into those spaces and you see kids helping each other. You see them just showing the best of humanity. And don't we need to see good people right now in the world? And all we have to do is go look at the youngsters and see what they're doing, because they can show that they can be from different sides of the track and still treat each other really well and still respect and care for each other and love on each other in ways that we can't figure out as adults. So the proof is in the pudding for this one on me.
So let me give you a good example on the high school level of that. We've had unified PE courses where we take our cognitively challenged kids and pair them with other students who are just cognitively intact, and create a community. Um, Schools can create unified arts related classes, and they can go where you've got kids paired together and really getting the most. And I think our cognitively intact students benefit as much pairing alongside those students as the kids who are really the most cognitively challenged. But I also come back to working with the counseling team and having that philosophical discussion with the whole team about if a kid is struggling or if a kid needs more, not automatically assuming that the arts class is what has to go. Because my comment is something like, that's the best part of that kid's day, or that's the part of the day they look forward to, or where their level of academic achievement really isn't as important as when they're able to do that thing that they like. So just not saying, well, let's get rid of the quote special and put in another period of that core that they still need. There are plenty of um, options where that doesn't have to be the immediate knee-jerk reaction. And I would say, lastly, that having your arts teachers at the IEP meetings, at the 504 meetings, at the multilingual learner update meetings with the parents, I think your arts teachers can tell you so much more about the kid and what they do well in a broad-based way. And then it's not, again, not dissing other academic or I hate that term, other teachers, but it is to say that the arts teachers oftentimes see a side of students that don't always come out in those other classes.
This hour is flying by. I have one final question, and as we said at the beginning, we are just scratching the surface with this. So I'm going to throw out my last question. We'll again do about 2 minutes each, and then wrap us up for today. So there are so many changes happening right now. At the state level, which funnels down to the local level, we have a new math policy that's scheduled to go into effect next year with seat time requirements for math for K through 8. We have a new pre-K to 3 literacy policy. We have an adolescent literacy policy under review. There are a lot of other subjects where regulations are being updated and changed. And we've heard from educators around the state how competing priorities, inclusive of those math and literacy, but also things like dual enrollment and CTE offerings, can create barriers to access for students. And then especially, for example, in high school, lower enrollment because of those competing priorities then limits the options that the school is able to offer for all students. So with all of that framing, my question is, and I know this is a big question, how can school leaders and schedulers ensure that students maintain the robust access to arts education that they deserve amidst all of these changes? And my order for this is Tamara, Mia, Chris, Terry.
Oh, great. Start with me on the hard one. I see Terry laughing. Thanks. I think it's really important for school leaders, and I can't necessarily relate to principals, but I have been an assistant principal. And I think it's really crucial for them to take a look at the time that is being spent on instruction. A lot of us are saying, there's only so many minutes in a day. The day's only so long. But when I spend a day in the schools, there are nuggets of time where I feel like things can be tightened up. right? So between breakfast and during announcements and just those transition times, we're going to have to, as a whole, as a school system in general, really kind of tackle that bell to bell piece, right? And making sure we get every second out of every minute, so that we don't have to lose anything. Again, I think it's less about minutes sometimes than it is about frequency. So our arts classes might lose a little, some minutes in terms of fitting in the day, but that can easily be balanced, not easily, that can be balanced out though by the increased frequency, right? So I think we have to think about that. I also just want to lift up an acknowledgement to those people on the call who have unique schools in their system. So I just, for example, our middle schools are 4th through 8th grade. So some of them. So you have 2 elementary grades and you have 3 middle school grades, and they have different COMAR arts requirements. And that can be really, really challenging. So as we move forward with all of these changes, I want to acknowledge that this has to create, it has to involve some really creative solutions. Mr. Barry was talking earlier about that idea of within the same school running a year-long schedule and a quarter, rotational type schedule or half year. We're going to have to start looking at some of those really creative pieces as we move forward and kind of throw away in some cases that old traditional mindset of the way we used to schedule. So I don't know that that answers your question, but just some things that I wanted to point out, as you said, when it comes to a lot of these changes coming up.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Tamara. Mia.
So again, I think that as someone who's on the pre-K-8 side of things, first of all, one thing that I've noticed in Baltimore City is we just don't have the number of art teachers that we need. So a lot of times we outsource to like programs that bring the art in, and maybe really, not maybe, but focusing on recruiting more art teachers. And like Ms. Mills was saying, making sure that we're hiring certified teachers so that children aren't discouraged by the experiences they have if they're with programs that don't necessarily recruit teachers, period. So it's like if you have a like for art, but you don't know how to do that pedagogy piece, and then they put you into a school setting, that could, like, a lot of artists aren't not necessarily teachers. This is 2 different skills. And I feel like that is so important that is highlighted. So on my end, working with the babies, it's to have that exposure so that they have that like determination, that need when they get to high school. Like, I need a dance program. I need a music program. I need a band program. I need an art program. These things must be here. So on my end is creating that awareness and exposure so that the kids have that thirst for the art. And then also protecting that time. As a school counselor, it's like, when do I see a kid? Protecting the art time so it's not a throwaway time. It is not like just the time for teachers to have their break. It is a time for children to invest in art education. So really protecting that time on the elementary level, middle school level, so that they see the need for it in the hospital.
Well said, Christopher.
I'll say that as I look at a lot of things, and I've seen the transition over the years, I lament the fact that electives that students used to take purely for the joy, or they would look forward to take, they don't get as many opportunities to do that now because, without again casting aspersions, the state is moving in blueprint to career pathways and things having to fit somewhere in that pathway. And so I would say, number one, we need to be savvy about making sure the arts are represented in pathways and creating our own pathways. And I know a number of systems, including my own, are looking at that and thinking about how do we allow students to see the arts not just as something that's nice or extra or that they enjoy or have a passion for, but is, definitely can be and should be career focused or part of a career focus. It's looking at creating capstone experiences for kids in the arts and internships, and not just when we think about that, thinking about those areas we think of, as, I'll just say, obvious career pathways, but that the arts represent art represented in that as well, and giving kids opportunities that way, because um, I just think, arts teachers always feel like they're under siege sometimes. And I think it is a matter of saying, no, we are core. We fit this model of, at least in the high school, of career focused pathways and the skills and the thinking sets that go along with this, and we have to have a place at the table, and making that philosophical argument on the regular in our schools, in our departments, and carving out that space and keeping it there and making sure it's sacrosanct. Challenging our leaders to accept that, just because it doesn't show up on a page, a schematic, or something along that line, and making sure that it does show up on the page.
Yeah. In 2026, we have to think about what is going to allow us to make the best humans possible. And we have to do it quickly with a sense of urgency. We have to be pumping out well-rounded citizens into the world to better the world that we're breaking, adults. So, I think this is such a critical time for education. And, I keep going back to young Terry Everhart and where I would be right now if I had um, more English and more math every day than I had the arts courses that I was coming to school for every day. And listen, I loved math. I took two math classes my junior and senior years. I loved those courses, but I came to school to be in the choir. I came to school every day to make music. I came to school because that's where my people were. Those were the people that allowed me to feel connected to the building. Those were the people that I wanted to emulate in my life. Those were the people that I stayed connected to for the rest of my life. Those are the lifelong friendships that I made were in the arts programs. Not to say that that's everybody. Every kid is going to have their thing that they're interested in and that they are passionate about. But I think we need to be running towards those things that unite us, and that the things that are really going to allow us to feel connected and to understand humanity. And I know that the arts do that on a day-to-day basis, and it can't be thought of as an add-on or something that is lacking value. It has to be something that we value just as much. So I mean, if we're going to add time to math and English, I think we should be adding time to the arts, right? I think, okay, well, we should get double art every day. But seriously, I think as we think about the students that are those high flyers of off-task behavior, a lot of times they're thriving in arts classes. So, what's the secret sauce? What's the secret sauce in those spaces that's allowing those students to thrive? And can we pour some of that into the other courses? So, as we think about how we navigate this next chapter and all the things that are coming down through mandates, I think we should really make sure that we're listening to kids, that we're asking kids. We're asking them what would have helped them as they have graduated. These graduates that are about to leave, ask them. They'll tell you. They'll be very honest with you. And I know that a lot of our youngsters are in college or in careers now. Ask them too. Let's get stakeholders that are really close to the ground, and ask them about what kinds of things they feel like will help them. And then let's also make sure that because we get mandates that we don't cut things that might actually make a difference. I think we should continuously providing access and opportunity and not allow mandates to limit us from providing access and opportunities. The biggest flaw that I can see from these mandates would be that school systems decide, okay, well, since we need more of that, we need less of something, because you know who they're going to think about when they say we need less of something. If we allow that to be the arts, we are looking at erasing. We've done a great job of erasing a lot of history already, but we're looking at erasing an aspect of our lived experience that connects us in a significant way. So I urge everybody that is thinking about scheduling and that's thinking about how to handle these mandates to really think through how you can honor the mandates, right? If they're state mandated, they're state mandated. How can you honor those and not cut things that are significantly important to kids? We have the data to prove it. So that would be my my ask.
Thank you all so much. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to our participants. Having the Zoom emojis fly through the screen has been lovely, so thank you for your engagement. We will be sharing the recording, and we encourage everyone to stay in touch with us at AIMS through our email list and on social media at Arts at Maryland. Thank you all for your support of and service to Maryland students. Every child in every grade in every school deserves robust access to high quality arts education. Thank you for your role in making that a reality. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.